Yes, people, how we doing? So I'll just wait to see when it's active. There we're going out, people. So we are live on here. So I'm going to be talking about a prisoner who was murdered over a pack of vapes, or rather a few packs of vapes. But this is an ongoing occurrence inside the UK prisons. And the extreme violence that is getting used in the prisons at the moment is out of control. Prison murders used to be few and far between, but now they are happening far too often, or more often than not. These should not be going on inside the UK prison system, especially over petty things. But I will tell you a bit about this case, because it came up today when I was doing a little bit of research into extreme violence in the prisons. But I can see someone in the chat there saying, can't believe you can get killed for something so trivial. I've seen altercations in prison. Good evening, Jade. How are you doing? I've seen extreme violence in prison, and I've spoke about one in particular, which was over a penguin biscuit inside of HMP Durham. That's how trivial it can be inside a prison. So Jordan Neale has just been sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 16 and a half years. Now, this happened in HMP Peterborough of July of last year. So Jordan Neale had a disagreement with a fellow inmate over vapes before later punching him at least 3 times. Gareth Jones, who was the victim, was knocked to the floor unconscious and died in hospital the following day after suffering a bleed to the brain. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the victim regarding this case, but when I was looking into this case, I'm very surprised he actually got convicted of murder, because he took this to trial. Obviously, he wasn't denying attacking him or hitting him. He admitted to that, which I'll talk about in a minute, but he took it to trial and he was found guilty. Now, he hit him with 3 punches. He's went in the pad and punched him 3 times, knocking him unconscious. He's went to hospital and died the following day when they've knocked his life support off. But for me, looking at this case, just knowing the brief details, obviously what I've looked over it, that isn't murder in my eyes. Yes, he's unfortunately lost his life, but when he's been in a fit of rage and he's punched him 3 times, punching someone 3 times isn't murder. He's in a fit of rage. He's wanting to hurt him. He's wanting to get back at him because he's borrowed him money to get vapes off him, and he's obviously bumped him. And you've got to stand your ground in prison. You've got to stand up for yourself. He's thinking he's taxed me. He's not giving us me vapes. So he went and flew at him, punched him 3 times. And unfortunately, he got a bleed on the brain. So to me, that's like a manslaughter. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve prison because it's taken away from the victim's family, but it should have been a manslaughter, in my opinion. So we'll talk a little bit more about this case. So the inmate was murdered in a row over vapes. Jordan Neale punched Gareth Jones 3 times in a cell at HMP Peterborough on July the 12th last year. And that's when he went to hospital, and the following day the life support machine was unfortunately turned off. But, and here is the but, this is the reason he's been convicted of murder, because after the incident, he's actually went back to his cell, panicking, knowing he's done wrong, but then he's made a phone call to his friend back home, and he said to his friend, where he's admitted to a close friend, he had fucked up and killed someone. Those was the words he's used, and those are the words that has got him convicted on murder. He continued to say, he is not breathing, and I am looking at life. During an interview, Jordan Neale, 27, told officers he had given Mr. Jones £80 and was promised he would be paid in vapes. The pair obviously had a verbal disagreement, been fighting nearly in the dinner queue over the vapes. They then returned to Mr. Jones's cell. Mr. Jones has spat in his face, causing him to lash out. So this is what I'm saying. when these two are together, this isn't a murder, in my opinion. And I do believe there will be an appeal. So the lad that's borrowed the money to give him some vapes back has actually spat in his face in prison. Anywhere, even outside, that's a high level of disrespect, more so in prison when other prisoners are watching. So he's lashed out and punched him 3 times in the head and chest. So all these blows weren't to the head. One of them was to the chest. So he's one fateful blow, but obviously he's a big, strong lad. He's fell over and bashed his head, causing a bleed on the brain, which has unfortunately killed him. So at Peterborough Crown Court on Friday, July the 18th, Neale was sentenced to 16 years and 6 months in prison. Obviously, that's a life with a minimum of 16 years. He was found guilty of murder by a jury following a 10-day trial at the court in February. So, like I say, these unfortunate set of circumstances. But the only reason he's been convicted of the murder is because of that phone call that he's made. That'll be the second biggest regret of his life. The biggest regret will be punching him so hard and ending his life. But then when he's went and phoned his friend, he's panicking. He's wanting someone to speak to. And he said, I fucked up. He knows he's done wrong. He's saying like, I fucked up. He's not breathing, panicking. The phone calls are recorded inside of prison. They've listened to the phone call back, and his own words have getting him convicted on murder. But for me, if he's up in court pleading his innocence, well, not his innocence, but pleading a manslaughter, saying, listen, I didn't mean to kill him, which he obviously didn't. He's spat in his face. They were having an altercation. He's punched him 3 times, and he's unfortunately died. But that's what I'm talking about in the UK prisons. Extreme violence in UK prisons, because like I said at the beginning of the video, if you just tune in now, you will be able to see this once I upload it, once I finish the live. But people were saying in the chat over something trivial. It's actually not over the matter. Once it goes past the stage of disrespect, it's no longer over the vapes anymore. The £80 that he's given to get some vapes off him has went out the window. It's no longer about that now. What it is now about is the disrespect. He's been spat in his face. The person that died, someone saying in the chat there, he spat at him. The victim, the person who has died, has actually spat in Jordan Neale's face. Sign of disrespect. Obviously, he's then have to lash out because there'll have been a load of people watching. It's on a dinner time. It's in a queue. Loads of people walking past. But I've seen an altercation inside of Durham prison when we were going down for tea. And you used to get a penguin biscuit with your tea or with your lunch. So you'd get a little pack. Sometimes you get a pack of crisps and you get a biscuit. This lad that was in the queue, sometimes sometimes the servery workers are ones that serve the food out the prisoners, like to keep some back for themselves. So purposely, they'll not give some of the prisoners coming through the penguin biscuit because the greedy buggers want it for themselves. So we walked through servery and the lads start shouting. He's come back, says, oh, you haven't given us me biscuit. Where's me penguin? The servery lad's shouting back at him, saying, you've getting it, jog on your way. He's shouting back, saying, listen, don't mug us off. So they're going at it. He's jumping over the counter. He's jumping that side. They're both chucking punches. The screws have intervened. They've both been sent on the ways. And that was all over a biscuit. But just because the screws intervened and got involved, later on in the day, obviously they're both behind the doors, screaming at each other through the doors, saying, you've disrespected us. This was all through a penguin biscuit. And it's all went wild. It's all went west. So they're out on the yard later on, scrapping it out over disrespect of a penguin biscuit, believe it or not. But like I've mentioned, it goes out the window after a while about what the initial argument is over. If you've disrespected inside a prison, then you've got to stand your ground. If someone disrespects you, you've got to get on top of it. You've got to deal with it. Deal with them. If you don't, you're going to continue to be disrespected. But I'm going to move on to the high security prisons, and the extreme violence in the high security prisons are a next level. In them prisons, they aren't going to be using the fists or coming at you with punches. It's going to be proper, serious violence, as in hot oil, makeshift chivs, that type of thing. I've seen a terrorist got oil tipped over his head inside of Franklin. I also seen a terrorist tip hot oil over a Geordie lad. And I also seen some of the biggest, naughtiest lads getting served up inside of prison. And served up means getting done in, getting stabbed, getting slashed. And in Franklin at the time, some of the lads used to have 6-inch spikes, like a 6-inch Neale, but thicker. And some of the other lads would sharpen them up in the woodwork shop on the grinder. And they would come back and they would use them, and they would sometimes put it in a bit of wood. So you can imagine that is a naughty, deadly weapon. And I did see it getting used on a few occasions. But that's just what's happening in the prisons. But like I mentioned about the murders inside a prison, if you go on Google and type in murder in UK prison, the amount of murders that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years is extravagant compared to what they used to be. It was very rare you would hear about murders inside of the UK prisons, but it's happening far too often. Right, people, I will do a bit interacting with the subscribers, and I can see someone in the super chat has donated £10. Honesty and truth. He says, thank you. I would like your opinion on what happened to Sandra Bland in America. I know it's a big ask, but your comments would be appreciated. Thanks for your channel. I'm not familiar with Sandra Bland. I've never looked into the case. I'll do a quick Google whilst I'm on here. Yeah, but if you can tell us in the comments section exactly who Sandra Bland is. So Sandra Bland was a 28-year-old African-American woman who was found hanged in her cell in Waller County, Texas on July the 13th, 2015, 3 days after being arrested during a traffic stop. Right, well, what I can do, I can have a little look into that because I don't honestly know anything about that case. Yeah, it does say here officials found her death to be suicide. That's what happens in those prisons over there. A lot of the time, they try and put it down to suicide when we all know how the guards can be in the US prisons. Someone has a little joke about the penguins there. What goes black, white, a penguin falling down the stairs. Good one. So Ron says, this is the big problem. You go on the in doing 5 and end up getting lifed off. So he's saying you end up going off into jail doing a 5 stretch or even a 5-month sentence, and you end up getting lifed off. Now, the likes of Jordan Neale, well, I'm not sure what sentence he was doing. He's only in his 20s. He's now not going to be getting out until he's nearly 50-year-old. He thought he would have, whatever sentence he's doing, maybe he would have thought he was out before the age of 30. Now he's going to be lucky if he gets released before the age of 50. And that's what can happen inside of prison as well. People think it's a game, it's nothing, it's a holiday camp, it's a fuck about. You go in there, get into an altercation, got to stand your ground, and something like this can happen. I'll speak about another case, a lad I was in home house with. Spice said he would do anything for a bit of spizzle, someone that didn't have much money. And obviously these people who haven't got much money and they're rattling to get something, the other prisoners use their vulnerability, and somebody had a hit on them on the wing. And this certain individual got paid 100 quid's worth of spice to go and slice the other prisoner, put a Mars bar down his face. Mars bar equals scar in prison terms, and it's a one of them. Sometimes it's with 2 blades, a big doubler down the face. So this prisoner has actually went and done it on camera. He's took the spice first, or some of it, then went like that to the prisoner on camera, opened him up right down there, got took to court and got a 12-year EDS, meaning he will not be released until he's done at least 8 years. And he used to cry himself to sleep because he had 2 weeks left. So for the sake of £100 and doing that, he's now got to do at least 8 years before he's up for parole, all for 100 quid's worth of spizzle, which would have been gone within a couple of days. So for that, getting wrecked for a couple of days has cost him at least 8 years inside a prison. So Oliver Cox says, thanks, Rick. I have just joined. So if you've just joined, obviously the story that I've been talking about, once I finish the live, it'll automatically upload, then you can go and watch it from the beginning. So Brian Fox says, love the channel. I'm a big fan. Cheers. Thank you very much. Honesty and Truth says, is Jeremy Bamber innocent? My opinion, I don't think so. And it's only through watching the documentaries and doing a little bit of read up and a bit of research. A lot of people saying that he is. The people are torn between this one, but I think he was a bit of a Fruit Loop, and I think he's guilty. Right, I'll just have a look further down. Has anybody else got any questions? Fire away. So Pasha Prince says, unfortunately, punches can kill if they hit right. So I'm assuming that he didn't ring the cell bell or go to the office. That will be the flag for murder that they will use. Like he says, obviously, when he's punched him and he's went on the floor, he can see that he's unconscious. And he even said in the phone call, he thinks he's dead. If he hasn't raised the alarm afterwards and tried to get him help, then that's another case for murder. Because if he had started screaming, press the cell bell or the alarm bell, shouting for the screws, shouting for help, then he hasn't meant to. But again, he's probably panicked, thinking he's dead. He shit himself, thinking that he might not get caught. But that's the tragic circumstances surrounding that. Aldo says, I was in Glenogle, a smoking ban came in and they used these vapes as pipes for their spizzle. What's this one? Luke says, are you still doing full life of vids? You should do Mark Hobson. I've actually done Mark Hobson, but it's probably been over a year since I've done the full lifers, which is the life without parole. Because I was in the process of doing every single person that's been given life without parole. There was about 100 cases of prisoners who were given life without parole. And I did get through around about 18 while I was talking about the case in detail, getting all the facts together. But now that I've got more time, I am actually going to continue to do that. And I am going to get through the full 100 lifers that were serving life without parole. Currently, there's about 73, I believe. The rest of them have either died, won their appeal and had their sentence reduced to a set tariff. And some of them, like I say, some have died and some have won their appeals. So I will continue to do that. Luke, don't you worry. Keep watching. I've got loads planned for this channel. I've got 2 podcasts lined up this week. I'm doing one tomorrow, so I'll probably release that one on Thursday. Because when I've done the one the other day, when I've done the live, there was a bit of an interference with the Wi-Fi and it was glitching a bit. So I will probably just pre-record them, then upload them. So Aldo says, what's worrying is the amount of youth that are in and out of jail with no hope, no future. They think it's fun and games till it's too late. Exactly that. And that's what I try to teach a lot of the youngsters as well, because that was me. Before I went into jail, when I was 20-year-old, when I got my IPP life sentence, I always wanted to go to prison because my friends had been, my dad had been. It was just the norm in the area. If you went to prison, you had that badge of honor, and that was in a warped sense of, or in a warped way. A lot of them, kids like he's mentioning now, what Aldo was mentioning, are in that mindset now. They want to go to prison. They think it's a game. I did. I wanted to go to prison until I got there, got what I wished for, and got a 99-year sentence. Luckily, I've had it terminated now, and I am coming on here, and I've went into schools and I've done a lot of work, and I'd still do work online, trying to deter the youth from going down that path. Because if they haven't got decent role models, people to stand in and talk with them the way that I do, or someone to push them in the right direction, saying, listen, get yourself in a boxing gym, or get yourself into a gym, get yourself running, get yourself fit, instead of getting off your nut with your pals, going around smashing people up or doing whatever, thinking that that's the be-all and end-all, when in fact there's more to life than dossing about the local estates, getting off your nut, drinking cider, like I used to, 99 pence at the time. I used to drink bottles of White Storm or White Lightning from the age of 11-year-old, knocking around the streets with no positive role models and getting up to mischief, thinking it's clever because there was nothing else to do in the local areas. So getting up to mischief was the norm, and it was fun, or that's what I thought it was. But looking back, it was a waste of life. So Oliver Cox has just paid Rick 99 pence. Is well worth it. Love watching you. Thanks, lad. Thank you very much, mate. So Luke, thanks, mate. Great channel. So Joshua says, how long were you in prison? Altogether, I spent nearly 7 years in prison, done just over 5 years on my IPP, which was imprisonment for public protection. I went in when I was 20-year-old, got out when I was 25, went back in when I was 35 for a further 14 months. So all in all, just shy of 7 years. But from the age of 20 up until 25, I don't regret spending my time in prison, because it made us the man I was. I was just heading down the wrong path, the wrong direction, and prison actually saved us, because when I got out, the majority of the lads I was knocking around with were doing the exact same. They were still getting smashed, getting off the nuts, where I had 5 years of being on a straight head, no drink, no drugs, no nothing, apart from gym and being around like-minded lads, but being around people that wanted better things in life, that wanted more than prison, business-minded lads in a high-security prison. So prison for me wasn't a waste of time. It made us, like I've just said, the man I am today. Then when I went back in on my recall for 14 months, which was actually worse than my initial sentence because I was married and I had 4 kids, that was a killer. But that was the turning point for me to think, right, that's me done with prison, do everything I can to stay out. And here I am now, living in Thailand with my wife and kids, living our best life. It's actually 10:30 at night here now. So Adam says, how did you manage not to become institutionalized? You only become institutionalized, I think, if you haven't got something better in life to look forward to, and you kind of get it out of your mind. Because I know people who's been in for 20 years that have come out, and because they wanted to be out and they wanted a better life, they've got plenty to live for out here. They were fine, they got on fine. Like I say, I think it all depends on the individual. If you've got nothing out here and you feel safe in prison, then you become institutionalized. But don't get us wrong, there is traits that you pick up when you've been in prison. Like for years, when I went in places, I always wanted to be seated near the exit or seated somewhere where my back's to the wall so I can see what's going on in front of me. So things like that is a part of institutionalized. And there is, like I've just said, little traits like that. But the traits that I picked up was getting in a routine, going to bed early, getting up early, which I still continue to do today. But that's part of being in a good mindset and being the best version of yourself. So Anthony says, Ricky, you've done really well for yourself and your family. I take my hat off to you for that. Thank you very much, mate. But that's why a lot of people watch this channel, for that sort of content as well, because when I started this channel up, I'll just get my book here. When I actually started this channel up, it was actually to promote my book, Behind the Bars Ruthless Fitness. Behind the Bars, that's where the name of the channel came from, Behind Bars TV, because I wrote that book whilst locked up during COVID when I couldn't see my kids. I nearly could have went the other way, went into a deep depression, but I didn't. I thought, right, I'm in this shithole. I'm in this problem that I'm in now. I'm the only one that can get myself out of it. So I got myself in the fittest state, possibly both physically and mentally, came out a total reformed, different person with a different mindset, better focus in life. And I wrote that book telling people how I got to that point, how I got so fit, and doing detailed plans, workout plans, diet plans, and how to better yourself, both physically and mentally, talking a lot about mental health, because a lot of the times I think why people end up in prison is through the mental health, through the anxiety, through the depression, through whatever mental illness they've got. For me, I used to suffer anxiety and depression and not realizing it until I actually went to prison and found myself and realized some of these feelings I was having was anxiety, but that anxiety caused me to be violent and caused me to be paranoid. And when you get anxiety, the anxiety turns to paranoia, and the paranoia, if not controlled, can be dangerous. I've been in prison before suffering with anxiety, being out on the wing with a load of lads, and I'm thinking someone's looking at us and he's talking to his mate and they're both looking at us. And in my head, I'm making up this is another thing about the extreme violence. In your head, you're making up this scenario, thinking they're talking about you, they're going to attack you or whatever. So you front it and go and see them and half attack them first. But they're like, what the fuck you're on about? We're just talking about your tattoos, or we're just talking about how big you look. But in your mind, you're blowing things out of proportion, thinking that they're wanting to tear up. When you look at it from a different perspective, they were just talking about, like I've just said, how big you look, or your tattoos, or he looks rough, or he looks like a decent person. And these are the type of incidents in prison as well that can spiral out of control. But like I said, that's why I talked about mental health in the book, and I do advocate for mental health. So Adam says, you seem to be the sort of person that whatever you turned your mind to, you excel at it. Would you agree? Absolutely. I've got an entrepreneur mindset, proper business minded. When I got sent to prison on my recall, there was involvement of a stolen motor vehicle. I was actually caught in the stolen motor, where I wasn't caught in it, but my DNA was on the airbag, and I lost my license. And my business was down the pan. I was a motor trader at the time, had my recovery trucks, had cars. That business I knew was done. So my new business I started up, which was Ruthless Fitness, my gym, my book, my YouTube channel when I got released, and all of them are propelling and excelling and doing absolutely great. But like I say, when I put my mind to something, like Adam's just said, I'll put my mind to something and I'll focus on it, and I'll just keep doing it and keep chipping away at it until I succeed, because that's just the way my mindset is. I will never fail. So Aldo says you can get recall for the slightest thing now, fail a drug test to walking in areas it shouldn't be. People can get recalled back to prison for being late back to a hostel, for stopping out overnight. I mean, I'm talking about your home address. If you've stayed out overnight without telling probation, then you can get recalled. People don't realize this one as well. They've got something that's called bad behavior. You can get recalled to prison for bad behavior, not for committing a crime, for bad behavior. And bad behavior can come under a range of different topics. It can come under not getting along with probation, having a disagreement with probation, being out in public, maybe someone's made an allegation that you've been out and you've been drunk or whatever, or you've been having a row in the street, even though the police weren't involved. But because someone's told probation, they'll say, right, you're getting recalled for bad behavior. You've been a bad boy. get back into jail. And that's how easy it is. Them probation officers have got far too much power. They can recall they've got the same powers as judges and magistrates. They can issue your recall without going to the courts, without going to the parole board. If they don't like you, which a lot of them don't, then probation, a lot of them are horrible, nasty, spiteful individuals. And they can issue your recall just for having a disagreement with them. If they're telling you off and telling you something, you're saying, well, that's not right, which I've had a few disagreements with my probation when they've been talking about the IPP. And I'm saying, well, you don't know what you're talking about because that's not the true facts. I've got the paperwork there. I'm an IPP. I've researched every little detail about the IPPs. So there you go. And they're saying, well, you're then arguing with them. They don't like it because you've belittled them, and they'll issue your recall just to get you off the streets and get you out the office because they don't like you. That's how easy it is. So Oliver Cox says, how long is recall? It depends on how long your sentence is. If you're a lifer, your recall can be up to 99 years. You could never get out again if you didn't behave yourself in prison. If you're someone who got a 10-year sentence, you've done 5 years in prison, you've got 5 year on license. If you get recalled and you've still got 4 year left on your license, you could end up doing the full 4 year. So the recall depends on how long's left on your license. So Adam says, you met David Bieber. Were you intimidated at all? I wasn't. Truthfully, I wasn't intimidated at all. When I seen him, I was a bit wary around him, thinking, how is he going to react? And he was a bit stubborn. He didn't really speak to many people. So obviously, I didn't really have much interaction with him apart from when we were in the gym. We're both training triceps together. He was wanting to use the bar, so we had a little bit of a talk, and not much of a talk, a little bit of a back and two, just saying how you doing, blah, blah. He wants to use the bar, what you're training. But people's asked the question, who was the most dangerous person I ever met? And it was him, David Bieber, the cop killer, absolute psychopath. When you look at him, he's got the shark eyes, he's got no color in his eyes, and he's an absolute psychopath. Right. I'm going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes, people, because like I've said, it's after 10:30 at night, and I'm going to wind down for a bit, because sometimes when I do these lives late, I'm still a bit high of talking, and you know what I mean? So when I try to wind down, my mind's still thinking about it. Right, Simon says, Ricky, mate, loving the channel, but I feel the need to ask, given your present location, have you learned to speak any Thai? Sawadee ka, kap kun ka, sawadee ton chow. That's about it for the moment. And kap. So I am in the process of going to be learning, so I'm going to take some Thai lessons. But Simon, I'm not sure whether or not you're familiar with Thai, but Sawadee ka means hello. It also means goodbye. And kap kun ka, you say thank you after you've had something to eat or whatever. Right, what we got now? A couple of more. Loving your channel. Thank you, Christine. Adam says, thank you. Oh, sorry, that's Christine again. Right, any more people? I'm going to wrap it up on 35 minutes. So we've got a minute left. And I'm not sure what the picture's looking like, because I've just bought myself a new camera and microphone the day. So hopefully it's a lot better, because the last couple of lives when I'm just using the camera on my laptop, it wasn't the best. So it does look a lot crisper and a lot clearer. Cost us a few £100, so I hope it was. Right, Oliver Cox says, thanks, Rick. I always watch your channel. Got my wife into it. Thank you very much, Oliver, and Oliver's wife. Thanks for your support, people. Right, Mackenzie says you can also get 28-day recall. So yes, you can. If you're doing a normal sentence, you can get a 28-day recall, but it doesn't actually mean you get released after 28 days, but you can be released. If the probation parole board as well, you can get a 28-day recall of probation, I believe, like he's just said, and you do get out after the 28 days. But sometimes they'll issue a 28-day recall, and then you don't get released after the 28 days. They can keep you in longer. So Alison Lynch says, Geordie tie, love it. So Moonshine, thanks Ricky for another great live. Right, people, I'm going to wrap this one up, but I will be doing loads of lives now that I'm over here and I've got more time. So thank you very much for watching, people. Remember to like the video and share it amongst your social media people. So take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe, people.